The truth will set you free. The truth will set you free.
Do you ever ask yourself, why in the world are people reacting to me so negatively? Well, we're looking at two Proverbs today that might be helpful as you sort through how people are responding to you. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Right now, I'm going to attempt to examine the Bible and dissect some of the churchy language we can really easily take for granted, digging into history and languages when I'm able anyway, to try and get at the heart of the text so that we can hopefully see and then apply at least some of what God has for you and me in these words today. Now, I'm not formally trained in Scripture. I'm just a guy using resources and a questioning mind to try and get at the truth, and that's something that we can all do, so I hope that you'll do that with me. We're studying our way through the book of Proverbs and have landed now at chapter 11, verses 10 and 11, and in the ESV that reads, "When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. By the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is overthrown." These two proverbs seem to potentially share a category. They both relate to the effect that a righteous or wicked person has on the community around them. Remember now that labels like righteous, like wicked, these are prototypes. They're roles, they're parts that we can kind of bounce back and forth between playing throughout our life as we make choices. So we're trying to identify what these prototypical paths look like in this case and take that knowledge into our moment-by-moment choices each day. These proverbs, these two are such important wisdom, I think, for geeks, because we can sometimes feel like the world doesn't make sense and is reacting to us in surprising ways. But there are truth nuggets here we can dig out that I think will better help us anticipate, in some instances, how people will react to us, why they might be reacting to us the way they are, and that can enable us to live more rich and meaningful lives in the context of God's kingdom right now. So verse 10 again says, "When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness." This proverb is not saying that it is morally acceptable for us to celebrate at the death of someone who has lived in hostility toward God or people. It's making an observation that gives insight to the effects of living righteously or wickedly. The Hebrew meaning of the phrase "it goes well" here specifically refers to prosperity. It tends to be the case that when a person living out their love and service of God experiences prosperity, people are happy to hear about it. It's kind of like a feel-good story about someone maybe selflessly loving and caring for others who then experiences some kind of win in their own life. We like hearing those kinds of stories. On the flip side, when someone dies who was known for living selfishly and in hostility toward God or other people, it tends to be the case that those who hear the news will celebrate. An example of this might be when a terrorist leader or a cruel dictator dies. And to some degree, we can see parallels of this phenomenon play out on social media, although usually in the negative sense of celebrating the misfortune of those considered evil. Comments along the lines of "they got what they deserved" can be very common and brutal as the misfortune of those who are known for evil is celebrated online. Now, let me try to tackle what might be an elephant in the room regarding this proverb, because I can imagine some people saying, "Peter, this doesn't happen. Cancel culture produces the opposite of what this proverb claims." As I've said before, proverbs like this state tendencies for about how the world works, not rules that have no exceptions. So when a prominent Christian is canceled for speaking truth, and a large segment online celebrate their downfall, as it were, is that an exception to this proverb? Well, I think sometimes. So exceptions do happen, but I'd say definitely not always, because it is too often the case that a Christian is targeted not merely for speaking truth, but for the callous and unloving way in which they speak it. In these cases, the proverb actually holds true, because it's largely that callous and unloving heart that is a part of the equation that people are seeing and reacting to negatively. When we are overwhelmingly known for our righteousness, it will tend to be a different story. And by that I mean true righteousness in the biblical sense, not self-righteousness in the modern Christian cultural reality. Righteousness here refers to living in line with God's commands and standards. And where do all of God's commands and standards flow out of? What are they ultimately about? love for God and love for the people that we interact with. Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40 in the ESV, Jesus says here, he said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. A second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." The truly righteous person, to the degree they live righteously, will be overwhelmingly known for their love and compassion. If we are living that way, it will more often be the case that people will be confused by some of the biblical views we hold that they find offensive, rather than be stirred up to hatred against us. They will be more likely to think to themselves, and they got some weird things that they believe, but man, I love them, Even if people don't agree with every view that we hold, if we are overwhelmingly known for our godly love and compassion, people will tend to be happy for us when things go our way. Now, forgive me for following this rabbit trail just a little further off course, because I can imagine the response to that might be, Peter, what about the people who see a tweet from someone expressing, let's say, pro-life views that other people find offensive, but those people don't know this person's love and compassion because the Twitter algorithm didn't send them all those loving and compassionate tweets that this person tweets every day. Then they celebrate when this person is canceled and the principle of this proverb fails. What about that, Peter? Well, first, that scenario seems very unlikely. We don't tend to take the time to express love and compassion online, and certainly not enough for it to overwhelmingly define our presences on social media. Second, loving well means loving wisely. We can say all day long that we love other people, but if we're not making an effort to understand how to effectively love them, how to wisely love them, then how loving are we really? So loving well means loving wisely. And I'm going to go way against the grain here, but I think the nature of social media platforms, both how they are used by users and how their algorithms work, should be a red flag to the wise that such platforms may be a foolish place to express views on contested issues. Now, I don't think this is a hard and fast rule, but I'm going to radically suggest that the next time we think of posting the expression of a contested view online in a place built on short messages and short attention spans, that we consider whether or not that is the most effective use of our time. So to return to the proverb 11:10, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. Yes, there are exceptions to this phenomenon, but when we see those exceptions affecting us or others, it's worth asking, okay, is this really an exception? Or is it actually the proverb playing out? Has wickedness been smuggled in and corrupted what should have been righteous? Okay, verse 11. By the blessing of the upright a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is overthrown. The Hebrew word for blessing here refers to prosperity. When a godly person prospers, the community around them is raised up. In what sense they are raised up isn't clear or specified here, probably because it could involve a range of senses. We can also imagine the way this comes about involving a variety of reasons. The influence and generosity of prospering Christians who are living genuinely godly lives makes life better for everyone around them. That's what happens. Not just Christians. I'm not just saying that's going to happen with Christians, but Christians living who are upright, as this verse says, living genuinely godly lives. Those kind of people make life better for everyone around them when they are prospering. By contrast, the influence of those living opposed to God and people, specifically the influence of their words, causes a community to be overthrown, or also translated torn down. The nature of evil influence is that it weakens or breaks down people, communities, and societal structures, making them vulnerable if there's a power struggle or just liable to collapse on their own. So this proverb is a reminder to us geeks how powerful words and actions are. We can default to the path of the wicked here if we want, and that's easy. For us, that often looks like grumbling and expressing unhelpful criticism of things and people. We can be all kinds of experts on what's wrong with people and wrong with the world, but that largely just promotes a dismal outlook on life and only weakens or even corrupts those who hear or read our words. If we want to live meaningful lives, carrying out the amazing kingdom purposes God intends for us, it starts with letting our character be shaped on the deepest inward level, and then generously sharing what God blesses us with, whether that's sharing verbally or sharing tangibly, physically. When our lives are blessed by God's instruction and guidance, we should look for ways to share those stories and about what God has done in our lives and the truth associated with them that had the effect on our lives. When God blesses us with financial resources and influence, we should put those things to work in a way that lifts up and improves the lives of those around us. Our words and actions are going to have an effect on those around us. The only way that that's not the case is if we completely isolate ourselves, and we know from so many other places in Scripture that is not what we are meant to do. So, living around other people as we should, investing in other people's lives as we should, our words are going to have an effect on those around us. And they're going to contribute to the total picture of what our lives are about. And what that picture looks like can be a huge blessing, can be a beautiful story, and it's largely up to us to choose. If you would like some help finding a good church in your area, I would love to help you do that if I can. Online resources and communities are good supplements, but by their very nature, they can't speak to your particular situation like relationships in a local church can. The context for almost everything in the New Testament assumes that we are serving and building purposeful relationships in a local church. So whether you're in a church that lacks Bible-based intentionality or maybe not attending any church at all right now, if I can help you get connected to an authentic, compassionate, Bible-oriented church, I would love to do that. Email me, please, paeter@spiritblade.com, and we can try to look at some websites of churches in your area together.